Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Windows on the World. Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday, 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and program stream at windowsontheworld.net. Good evening, everybody. What a great show we've got for you this week. Yes, don't be too fooled by the title, Surviving the Mass Extinction. Yes, the announcement this week by the government of Ireland, or the puppet in power that's been put there allegedly by the Irish people, they have declared, yes, what we've been talking about for a long time. Climate emergency has been declared recently, but on top of that, carbon neutrality is upon us by 2030. Yes, Ireland's countryside will be depopulated and the populations forced into open concentration camps, also known as smart cities, walkable cities, or even vibrant communities. Yes, by 2030. That's the end of all private transport. So, rural communities, what's going to happen to them? They're going to be forced into cities. This sounds like some kind of dystopian nightmare. No, it's the global action plan that we've been talking about for at least 10 years. I've seen the escalation of this from the borough I was living in London, and indeed every other borough in London, every village, every town, every city in the UK. And yes, this is draconian and it's all upon us. What has happened is that we have been hoodwinked by our government, and especially Theresa May. Now, the UK is not far behind Ireland in this, as yes, Theresa May has left her legacy, the Carbon Neutrality Treaty. Yes, it's not actually called that, but that's effectively what she has done within the 12th hour of her office and the last hours of her regime. This is what she's done. We're going to get into all that tonight, and also what we can do about it, because there have to be some solutions. Otherwise, it would be, yes, a real dystopian nightmare. But the good news is that these people are pretty stupid, and if there's enough people out there who are clever enough, then something can happen, and indeed it is happening. On Friday the 21st of June, the Metro newspaper, which goes out to pretty much every Londoner who gets on a tube train or a bus or even walks or cycles even, goes out to them. And on Friday the 21st, yes, there was a very interesting headline in London's Metro. It said, Jeremy Corbyn's brother claims man-made climate change does not exist. Now, it was a great headline, as our talk, The Bigger Picture, which was on the 22nd of June in Swindon, had made it into London's Metro, the free commuter propaganda sheet. You know, it's given out to millions as they head home after work. There was even a picture of Piers Corbyn and a side profile of myself, and that was put in with the article. Very interesting. And I believe that photograph that was put into the London Metro was taken at the first ever Extinction Rebellion die-in outside Downing Street about 6 months ago. Banners had been displayed by Piers Corbyn and a few others, including myself, to the latte-swilling entitled few who, while sort of chatting amongst themselves, smugly, dutifully ignored the facts that Piers and a few other, what would you call them, mountebanks, travelling storytellers at this event actually were putting on display. In other words, that a small amount of CO2 is necessary for life on Earth. It's a shame that those who are basically controlling the public do not agree. Well, they know it's a scam. However, this is the biggest taxation and control system ever imposed on the public, or indeed the whole planet. So it's such a shame that those who had been driven down to London to do a die-in outside Downing Street, who had obviously been extending their carbon footprints, well, they will soon be restricted to one die-in a year. Yes, a real one under the UN and its Sustainable Development Programme. So tonight's show features the results of the recent agreement by the UK and Irish governments to destroy their economies, put the population into poverty and prevent them from travelling anywhere. But first, let's look at what the Metro newspaper actually said. This is quite interesting. Jeremy Corbyn's astrophysicist brother has claimed that man-made climate change does not exist and is manufactured by journalists. Piers Corbyn, 72, says claims of widespread consensus on the topic of man-made climate change are false. Well, let's take a look at this and take it apart. That's a rather simplified way of looking at it, but those who may read this are, after all, on their way home and often in crowded tube trains, using this rag as a distraction to their exhaustion and discomfort. That's really all it's there for. It's just basically a gossip sheet, but it carries on. In April, Piers branded 16-year-old environmental activist Greta Thunberg an ignorant, brainwashed child who suffers mental abuse by manipulative adults. Well, it printed something of truth in there. Well, Saint Greta has certainly been brainwashed. But remember, folks out there, she can see CO2. This is very important. We're looking here at somebody with supernatural abilities. But whoever said she was an activist, well, she is being controlled by PR and activists. Yes, it's all show business after all. But listen, everyone out there, following on from last week's show, just please put your hate aside, you heretics. Remember, our house is on fire, to quote St. Greta. Let's carry on with what this article said. Piers believes the root cause of rising temperatures is solar activity. What? It couldn't be, could it? Is that the solar activity that the UN IPCC leave out of their models and projections on climate change? Yes, I think it is. I think that's the sun we're talking about here. So, yes, Piers believes the root cause of rising temperatures is solar activity which produces natural climate change cycles. He said the general trend now is towards colder weather and jet stream fluctuations and some very warm spells within a generally colder world. He carries on, I would say man-made climate change does not exist. This is a manufactured story that journalists have put out. Well, journalists repeat it and lobbyists put it out. It's an industry, all right, yes, and it's a well-oiled machine. Well, sort of ironically, it's oiled by big oil, and people need to look that one up if they don't believe it. He supports this claim, it carries on, with a petition from the 1990s signed by 30,000, well, it's now 32,000 at least, maybe a bit higher than that. This is called the Oregon petition, by the way. They don't actually state that. He supports this claim with a petition from the late 1990s signed by over 30,000 sceptical scientists. Well, let's just call them scientists, shall we? The Labour leader's older brother, it says here, who runs forecasting firm Weather Action, will share his views at the Bigger Picture, a 6-hour event at Moose Hall in Swindon, Wiltshire on Saturday. Well, in the talk, we give many sources for the consensus, what's being imposed on us, and the lack of evidence or just scientific fraud which backs up this totalitarian system of overt control. It says here, Mr. Corbyn will talk at the £10 per ticket seminar. £10 for a whole day, that's got to be some kind of bargain. With Mark Windows, who runs a podcast devoted to what he claims are fake news narratives about global events. Well, we have to report that the Metro isn't even fake news. It's more like gossip with some pictures in it. So in this case, that's not a bad report. They haven't completely slandered me like a lot of the controlled opposition do. It says here, the third speaker is Sandy Adams, who believes the UN Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Programme is a major threat to human freedom. Well, she does say that. I say that. Many other people say that. And it is. That is what this show's about. Can we survive this mass extinction? The mass extinction which is going to be imposed on us within 10 to 20 years. It says here, but despite Piers' scepticism, it would appear his younger brother has a very different outlook on climate change. Yesterday, it was announced that Jeremy Corbyn has created a new role on Labour's front bench, appointing Danielle Rowley as shadow minister for, wait for it, you're going to laugh at this, climate justice. Oh, please put your anger to one side, everyone out there. Put your anger to one side. Stop the hate now. Let's have justice for the climate. Climates have feelings too. You couldn't make this up, could you? But they do. So roll up, yes, for the bigger picture. You can book one in your area. Just get in touch through windowsontheworld.net. So welcome to all those carbon neutral people who are getting ready for their demise through the Global Action Plan. Yes, between 2030 and 2050, the end game should have been accomplished with the participation of the majority of the public. Think about that for a minute. Our last show focused on the tactics used by local councils in the UK to basically control public narratives, whilst appeasing the public by setting up so-called independent groups. In that case, so the case we were talking about, it was the rollout of the 5G untested millimetre wave technology in a small town in Somerset called Glastonbury. Go back to last week's show. Glastonbury Festival and 5G, and have a listen to that. It was very interesting today, as a little aside, that we drove around the Glastonbury Festival site. It is like an open concentration camp, but not so open. We managed to sneak in, but it was very difficult to get out. We took some pictures in there of some of these cell towers, and then we were basically told to leave. And the festival is, well, it's not even started. It's not even nearly started yet, but we've got these goons everywhere who are controlling miles around from this festival site. It's quite incredible, actually. And the atmosphere in there is not good. It doesn't feel like a jolly festival. It's more like you have these open fields where you've just got tents and they're on the side of a hill. Now, you can't sleep on a slope, but they've got them in there. It's like a holding camp. They have fences all around, and they have these tents in rows, which are right next to each other. So they're packing as many in as possible. It really does look like some kind of holding camp. So they are getting everybody ready for this, folks. Is that a conspiracy theory? No, it's a 40-chapter document which came out of the United Nations in the early 90s. We talk about this all the time. So, since last week's show, even more has come to light about these local councils acting against the public interest, and this will be reported on in due course in the next few weeks. Dirty tricks and shenanigans have been reported, and behind the scenes we're starting to hear a few things. Very interesting. It will be the same as your local council. These people in there do not represent you because they are being instructed from much higher above. As was our Prime Minister, of course, because to declare what she declared in the last hours of her miserable regime is a little bit underhand. However, they just slipped in their commitment to carbon neutrality without so much fuss. Without any fuss, actually, in the last days of yet another sock puppet to globalism. Yes, that's the Theresa May and her despicable regime. So the fake front of this most useless of public servants has long gone, and only a dreary shadow remains. That's her. But they're going to be looked after. They're going to be looked after in the background because they've been useful idiots. That's her and him, her and her husband, of course. So paving the way for the next phase of the new system was the most useless person, her, to the public, but useful to her controllers. May will get her rewards and live happily ever after. Yes, she will. The UK citizens are not so lucky. They are in the end game. Yeah, this really is serious, folks, because what is being accelerated through this fake protest group, Extinction Rebellion, who are merely an arm of global governance, and that is clear to everyone now, or everyone with a brain cell. How can a government let this bunch of entitled latte-swilling idiots control public opinion and public narrative? Because they don't really, because they are part of the government. We've already reported on this. The people involved in that organisation and what they stand for and where they came from is well documented. Look at our show, Extinction Rebellion, The Facts. Nobody can refute the facts. These are the facts, not feelings and not beliefs. Yeah, and for those who want their voices to be heard, I will quote last week's useful idiot and self-serving narcissist masquerading as a public servant who, when asked by the public for some consultation, this was a council meeting, in a public meeting, responded by asking them to put their anger aside. Yes, let's have no hate speak here. Why are you being so divisive? Don't you want to be vibrant and diverse? Don't you want to be sustainable? Don't you want to have all of your rights taken away for the common good? Of course you do. That's why you're here, because you have no voice. Yes, the UK citizens are not so lucky. They are in the end game, so this is not an exaggeration or a conspiracy theory. It's just a business plan, nothing personal either. Yeah, so while the apocalyptic climate cult followers have sort of declared an emergency with no apparent prima facie evidence, the real extinction event, which they have been working towards alongside global and local government, has now been announced. Yes, I keep having to reiterate this. This is the mass extinction. This is the real mass extinction, not the rubbish that Extinction Rebellion are talking about. This is the extinction of a lot of the population of the planet. Yeah, it's getting quite serious now. There have been a fair few warnings of the past few years, really, but everything we've been talking about for the last 10 years is all about to happen. The pace has been getting quicker, and now it is time for the end game. So climate emergency, let's get into this. This is from Reuters, but it came into Breitbart, that, that alt-right website, which isn't really alt-right. Okay, but this actually is from Reuters. Climate emergency is the headline. Ireland set to ban private cars while planning a mass third world migration. So this is called replacement migration. It's to stop dissent in countries by dividing and ruling, by overpowering the indigenous population with people not from their country who will not be on their side. Extinction Rebellion and all of these fake protest groups have all been working to this same agenda, and it culminates in basically the loss of all your rights. We've reported on this widely. So yes, climate emergency, get this again. Ireland set to ban private cars while planning a mass third world migration. So let's get into this. Drivers will be forced off the roads in Ireland and the population packed into higher density cities under a long-awaited climate plan, which will revolutionise people's lifestyle and behaviours according to local media. No, not according to local media, according to global media, according to the World Bank, according to the UN, according to the World Health Organization, according to any organisation which has a globalist agenda. Yes, the UN Climate Action Plan, Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, it's here. The iron fist is here now. Yes, all the soft talking has stopped, all the consensus meetings, all the fake consultation is over. Now it's really coming in. Totalitarianism is here. So basically, this is one of the most shocking stories that we've ever had to cover, because we are now being told it is the end of private transport. You're going to be locked into surveilled cities. What about a rural country like Ireland with thousands and thousands of people living in the country not having cars? Just think about what this is going to mean. If they're going to put people into open concentration camps, this is the end game. It has to be, with the Internet of Things, with all of the things we talk about, driverless cars, the complete control and management of all the world's population through surveillance. Yeah, I've held off for saying this for quite some time, but there are positive aspects to this, because it's all about the liability of these public servants, these puppets that have been put there, and we have to keep reiterating this. Let's carry on. It says nudge policies such as huge tax hikes, as well as bans and red tape outlined in the plan, will pave the way to a vibrant Ireland of zero carbon emissions by 2050. Remember, cars off the road by 2030, according to the government, which last year committed to boost the country's 4.7 million strong population by a further million with mass migration. Yes, let's carry on. In order to avert, it says here, a climate apocalypse. Every religion has to have apocalypse. Every apocalyptic cult has to have an apocalypse, a redemption. Yes, after the apocalypse. And in this case, there's not going to be an apocalypse. There's just going to be an end game, a result. So it carries on. In order to avert a climate apocalypse, the government plans to force people out of private cars because they are the biggest offenders for emissions, according to Transport Minister Shane Ross, useful idiot globalist puppet, whose proposals, which include banning fossil fuel vehicles from towns and cities nationwide, are posed to cripple ordinary motorists. Launching the plan in Dublin, parachuted puppet, Leo Varadkar, compromised parachuted puppet, outlined his vision for an island of higher density cities. What have we been talking about for 10 years? High density cities. The reason I moved out of London was exactly because of this. When you are told there's going to be 1,000 new flats in an already overcrowded borough in your immediate vicinity, you know this is not going to end well. That's why I got out. When I go back there, it is indeed an open concentration camp, a surveilled open concentration camp. So it says here, an island of higher density cities consisting of populations whose lifestyles and behaviours have been totally transformed by carrot and stick policies outlined in the climate plan. Now, this is exactly what happens. They get everyone on board on the back of an environmental agenda, on the back of let's all cycle everywhere, let's walk, let's have 40-foot pavements, let's have a cafe culture. But it's not about that, is it? Because once you're locked in and you can't get out, then you start to realise that maybe you haven't got as much freedom as you used to have. You're completely dependent on public transport, which is the idea. So the puppet repeater, Leo Varadkar, has nothing to do with these policies as they are global and coming from the UN Agenda 2030. He's merely doing as he's told. Same as the other lying virtue signalling London Mayor Sadiq Khan. Let's carry on before we get back to Khan. Our approach, it says here, this Leo Varadkar, says our approach will be to nudge people and businesses to change behaviour. Call that behavioural nudging, which is a psychological technique used by what we call change agents. Change behaviour and adapt new technologies through incentives, disincentives. Disincentives, you know what those are, don't you? Yes. You're not allowed to have a car, and anything outside the controlled narrative of public opinion is going to be clamped down on. Stop it with your hate speak. Yes. Can you please put your anger aside for 1 minute? Etc., etc., etc. Yes, our approach will be to nudge people and businesses to change behaviour and adapt new technologies through incentives, disincentives, regulations and information, the globalist Prime Minister stated. There will be no choice. By incentives, they mean there is one choice. Do as they say, wrapped up in fake environmental buzzwords which mean only one thing, and that is totalitarianism. It's about vibrant populated city centres, the idiot says. Livable, with excellent amenities and transport as we embrace higher densities. Now, let's have a look what's happened to London. 400,000 council houses going. Absolute social cleansing. Everybody who was living in those properties being pushed out. Basically, thousands of new expensive flats being built, which will probably, almost definitely, be pulled down within the next 10 to 20 years. So don't think you can invest in real estate because that's against the principles of Agenda 21. In other words, let's put it like this. Mass immigration will continue to stop dissent amongst the indigenous by divide and rule under the banner of diversity. The overpopulated human settlement zones will be open concentration camps with mass surveillance, no choices except chain stores and a cashless monoculture run on the Internet of Things, which will regulate and monitor everything by rationing. That's the future, rationing. Yes, the future is rationing of everything, mainly energy. Your energy is harvested and anything you get back is rationed. That's how this system works. The document, it says here, which was unveiled on Tuesday, features more than 180 measures to decarbonise the Irish economy, including making private car ownership prohibitively expensive, with petrol and diesel car sales banned by 2030, a date by which it says general carbon tax will be increased from £20 a tonne to at least 80 euros a tonne. 20 euros a tonne to at least 80 euros a tonne. Well, this is the next step on from the ultra-low emission zones and the restrictions which are already in place. The same has also been delivered in the UK during the last hours, as we say, of Theresa May's treacherous regime, which has subverted public opinion and lied and backtracked. She has done this ever since day one. Well, look at Brexit. In addition, it says here, the plans demand that coal and peat-fired power stations are replaced with wind farms and other green, in inverted commas, energy solutions in order to meet the requirement that 70% of electricity will be generated from renewables by 2030. Now, let's take this one apart. The government already know that renewables will not work. So this means absolute rationing of electricity, which will become a luxury. You will have credits, carbon credits. When you run out, you get nothing. I predict massive power cuts, and I say this with very good reason and because I was told this by the two main suppliers to the national grid. See our show, The Green Energy Agenda, on YouTube while it's still there. Have a look at that. That tells you everything you will need to know. And those people have no axe to grind, and they are wondering why the government is lying about renewables. Well, it's lying about renewables for a really good reason, because they're not meant to work. You are going to be taxed to oblivion, and you are going to have electricity now and again, or whenever the government says you can have it. And if you haven't got the money, you don't get it. And that's the way it's going to work. So basically, this is all done on the banner, under the banner, yes, of saving the planet. The end game is a mass extinction of Homo sapiens sapiens, and that is in the documentation. When you look at what this is a massive depopulation. And there's also a story that I was looking at today saying people are not now living as long. We've actually gone into decline. And a lot of this is to do with what's happening in the hospitals. When old people go into hospitals now, they're very lucky to come out. No, this isn't some mad conspiracy theory. This is true. I know many people who've lost their parents in hospitals over the past 5 years. So let's see what it says here. Plans to dramatically slash carbon emissions by ditching tried and tested energy sources such as coal and nuclear in favour of renewables will necessarily result in a collapse in living standards, according to scientists, including Cambridge engineering professor Michael Kelly, who has previously explained that such proposals represent total madness. No, they don't represent total madness, Mr. Kelly. They represent the Global Action Plan. It carries on. In energy terms, the current generation of renewable energy technologies alone will not enable a civilized modern society to continue, he asserted in a peer-reviewed paper published in 2016, pointing out that renewables such as solar, wind and hydropower supply just 7% of electricity needs globally, while the rate at which fossil fuels are growing is 7 times that at which the low-carbon energies are growing. Now, these are just facts, and we have to really look behind what is being told to the public. And I think even most of the public will now realise that there's something more to this agenda. This is not an environmental programme, as the UN have clearly stated. And as we put forward in the bigger picture, we talk about this all the time. I've got all the quotes from all the people who are on the inside of this, who are telling you that this is not an environmental programme. This is about policy. It's nothing to do with the environment. So this voice of sanity in the New World system, though, this Mr. Kelly will not be heard by the masses. They have their propaganda to repeat, and they have their state-backed protests, which will help the new system take away any rights they may have had, with the host population giving it all up, either voluntarily or through peer pressure from the baying crowd who have been taught to sacrifice reason in favour of mass hysteria. Yes, this is exactly what Extinction Rebellion is all about. It's exactly what their founder stated that her aims were all about. In other words, getting people to react with emotion, not to facts, but to belief and emotion, instilling beliefs to create emotion. Very, very simple propaganda trick. Now, this next article is from Sustainable Business from June 20th, 2019. Here's the headline. Ambitious 2050 climate goal relegated to footnote at EU summit. This was in Brussels, Reuters. This is from. A push by most European nations for the world's biggest economic bloc to go carbon neutral by 2050 was dropped to a footnote at a summit on Thursday after fierce resistance from Poland, the Czech Republic and Hungary. Interestingly, all the countries that know what it's like to live under communism. As Václav Havel said, I think he was the Prime Minister, the leader, the Polish president, I think, from up to 2013, he said environmentalism is the new communism. So it's interesting that these countries are resisting it. France and Germany had led efforts for the 28-member EU to lead by example in setting an ambitious new climate goal ahead of UN climate talks in September that US President Donald Trump has abandoned. But unanimity was needed, and last-ditch persuasion efforts in what diplomats described as impassioned talks that dragged on for hours failed to ease fears among the Central and East European states, including Estonia, that it would hurt economies like theirs dependent on nuclear power and coal. Well, this is all a bit of a distraction as well, because these totalitarian agendas are much bigger than communism and much worse than communism. This is what's going to be imposed. EU leaders called on the European Investment Bank to increase climate funding and acknowledged vast differences in the continent's energy mix, but Poland remained unmoved. Good for Poland. The whole agenda is driven by the UN Global Action Plan, which we talk about a lot, Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. The European Investment Bank is like fully behind the looting and the assets of all people, along with the World Bank, of course, and through the IMF. Renewables will bankrupt nations. This is the whole idea. This was clearly stated in an aside by Evelyn de Rothschild in 1992 at the Rio Earth Summit and the UNCED meeting. Have a look at a video on YouTube by George Hunt and put in UNCED George Hunt and listen to that. It's absolutely shocking, and very few people have looked at that. One of the most important videos on the totalitarian agenda, which the public do not know about. So, renewables will bankrupt nations, and anyone not playing ball will be targeted by the New World System of the looting of all assets and the control and management of all planetary resources and all people under the banner of social equity and, of course, that thing we love, social justice. Yes, stop it with your hate speak. Don't you want social equity? Don't you want social justice? Why are you being so selfish? We're all doing this for the common good. But as Dan Pena said about carbon tax, it's an effing great scam. I wish I'd thought of it. Check out him on YouTube. Very interesting. And he is a globalist. But he knows that this is a scam. BBC News, June 20th. Get this. BBC News, June 20th. Climate change. MPs announce a citizens' assembly. 6 parliamentary committees have announced plans for a citizens' assembly to discuss how the UK should tackle climate change. In response to their state-created fake protest group, Extinction Rebellion that is, the useful idiots of the totalitarian New World System have basically actually influenced the government. How could they do that? Because they're an arm of global governance. The globalists need the anti-globalists to implement their policies. The globalists have a plan. The anti-globalists do not have a plan. They need to be steered into action. And that's what these fake protest groups are all about. Ironically, they also have citizens' assemblies, as did Occupy when it was taken over by George Soros. This template works in an extremely simple way. So, in response to their state-created fake protest group, yes, the useful idiots of the totalitarian New World System seem to have got their way. Who'd have thought, eh? It says here it comes after the government committed earlier this month to cut greenhouse gas emissions to almost zero by 2050, which means, in effect, a real extinction event. That's what it means. It means the extinction of you, me, and lots of other people. Probably getting things down to what they really want, which is the global billion. Now, I never usually talk about this stuff because it's so way beyond what most people can believe, but these policies are implementing it. What's happened in the last several days, several weeks, let's say, has totally changed the landscape now. We are in the end game. So, yeah. The assembly, it says, is likely to be set up. This is a citizens' assembly that's been announced by the treacherous Theresa May regime. It's likely to be set up in the autumn and will meet over several weekends before producing a report. Energy Secretary Greg Clark welcomed the move saying public engagement was vitally important, but in effect not needed. Let's get into this. No, it isn't needed, and it never was. Neither is his input. He is merely administrating on behalf of the real government, global governance, the one the public know nothing about, the one the politicians know nothing much about. Why is that? Why don't they know about it? Because they have never bothered to find out, and they have their noses in the trough. They have their blinkers on and noses in the trough. MPs never address issues of real importance. It's not what they are there for. Look at the public support Jeremy Corbyn had, and look what happened to him. He allowed that to happen to him. Look at the rubbish he's now spouting. He is spouting rubbish about this agenda, and he's furthering this agenda. I kind of always knew this would be the way, but you have to give people the benefit of the doubt to start with. But the doubt set in, well, quite some time ago. So let's see. Energy Secretary Greg Clark welcomed the move, yes, saying public engagement was vitally important. Well, no, it isn't. And we know it isn't, okay, because they have never bothered to find out, these MPs, they've never bothered to find out. They have their noses in the trough. They'll never address issues of real importance, just to reiterate what I've just been saying there. The UK, it says here, was the first major nation to propose the 2050 emissions target, and it has been widely praised by green groups. The tools of global governance, the fake greens, we're talking about Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth. These are organisations full of activists. Fake green. This is global green. This is Soylent Green. Yeah, check that one out. That film came out in the 70s. It was prophetic in some ways. A bit off. You can't sort of generalise here, but take a look at it and have a look at the way they're living, and have a look at the way we're living now. Have a look at the way they were living in the John Carpenter movie of the late 80s. They live. And have a look at the way we're living now. Are there comparisons? Well, yeah, I think so. But that's a conspiracy theory, isn't it? Let's get back to this. But some of the phase-out is too late to protect the climate, whilst others fear that the task is impossible. Well, anyone with a brain cell knows it's unnecessary, but let's not get into that. Yes, they say they fear it's too late because they have been indoctrinated and cannot separate issues such as pollution from weather and climate. Very important point, that is. So the UK commits to net zero emissions by 2050. It says here, this is the BBC, should the UK's climate target be sooner? Well, the BBC continues its propaganda and its virtue signalling repeaters just work tirelessly against the public interest while they're concentrating on issues of no real importance and failing at all times basically to report in any balanced and unbiased way. These are just facts, folks. It carries on. Labour MP Rachel Reeves, who chairs the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee, BEIS, or just BS for short, said achieving the target would require a buy-in from the public. This is where we need your consensus, folks. We can't take away your cars and your rights to live a peaceful and happy life without undue stress and harassment unless you agree to it. So we've got to get you to appear to agree to it. Now, it says here, this isn't a challenge for just one parliament. Is there a clue there? Could there be something else going on here? Could there be a global action plan? This isn't a challenge for just one parliament, one political party. As we keep saying, it doesn't matter who's in power, the agenda will continue. Or one generation, it says here. To achieve net zero by 2050, we need to build cross-party and cross-generational support, she said, which means that all of those with a brain cell who can still think have to be brought on board or have to be marginalised. This is what she actually means, this useful idiot. Well, she should be outed for what she is, but she's all for the taxing literally to death of the public. That's what she's into. If any of these idiots had a brain cell, it wouldn't be of any use to the system whatsoever. So that's something always I bear in mind. So let's have a look. The Citizens' Assembly, the new government and globalist Stasi of the West will include, let's carry on, the BEIS committee will be joined by the Environmental Audit Housing, communities and local government, of course, because it has to tie into that. It's a global action plan implemented at local level. The Science and Technology, Transport and Treasury committees in hosting the Assembly. Holding a citizens' assembly to discuss climate policy has been a demand from climate group Extinction Rebellion, which held protests causing widespread disruptions early this year. Imagine, perchance, that was a real protest. Would the government be listening to it? No. I think you might find it would be a little similar to what's happened in France, except in the UK, they probably wouldn't blow their eyes out and beat them up and squirt tear gas in their face, but it would have been quashed with military precision. So, the commitment, it says here, to meeting the net zero came after the government's advisory committee on climate change recommended the target in May. No, they didn't. It was recommended to them and they repeated it. Go to a council meeting. Do you think any of those idiots sat round that table know anything about this stuff? No, they don't. Most of them can't string a sentence together, as we proved in last week's show. Do listen to that. But yes, let's carry on with this. Meeting the target, it says here, will mean emissions from homes, transport, farming and industry will have to be avoided completely. Let that one sink in. Meeting the target will mean emissions from homes, transport, farming and industry will have to be avoided completely. Well, that's the end of everything. That is the end game. Or, in the most difficult examples, offset by planting trees or sucking CO2 out of the atmosphere. What kind of idiot would do that when we need more of it? Nothing wrong with planting loads of trees, but remember, this is not an environmental programme. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about control and management of all population. Mr. Clark said, ending the UK's contribution to climate change will be the defining decision of our generation. Yes, it will. And it will be the end game, definitely, and will require the effort of a generation to deliver it. Initiatives to engage the public will be vitally important to appreciating the challenges of getting to net zero and giving people a say in shaping the future policies to achieve the target, he added. Well, I'm going to add that you're not going to get any say in it unless you get out and do something and start organising yourselves locally against your local council. There's no chance otherwise. This is from the Commons Select Committee at Parliament UK. This is from the Parliament website. Let's see what they say. What is a citizens' assembly? A citizens' assembly is a group of people who are brought together to discuss an issue or issues and reach a conclusion about what they think should happen. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? The people who take part are chosen so they reflect the general population in terms of demographics, e.g. age, gender, ethnicity and social class, and sometimes relevant attitudes, e.g. preferences for a small or large state. In other words, a cherry-picked bunch of lobbyists, self-appointed experts and assorted useful idiots who will steer the group into the intended outcome, which was all pre-planned and agreed upon beforehand. This is a nonsense. This is how they rolled out their democratic views in Occupy. In other words, they get rid of everybody, they bring in facilitators, they bring in their dragons, as do Extinction Rebellion, and they will marginalise and destroy any opposition. That is what a citizens' assembly is in a nutshell. It's to steer you through consensus by useful idiots, marginalising public opinion for an intended outcome. That is a citizens' assembly, folks. Let's carry on with the crap anyway. Citizens' assemblies give members of the public the time and opportunity to learn about and discuss a topic before reaching conclusions. In other words, they get brainwashed into a very narrow agenda and they're given limited choices and steered into the end result. That's exactly what that means. Let's just read that again. Citizens' assemblies give members of the public the time and opportunity to learn about and discuss a topic before reaching conclusions. In other words, you're given the information which steers you to the conclusion. Very, very simple. Assembly members are asked to make trade-offs and arrive at workable recommendations. Yeah, right, okay. In other words, a controlled narrative and limited choices presented which steer the group into, yes, you got it, group consensus. Citizens' assemblies and other similar methods have been used in the UK and other countries, including Australia, Canada, Ireland and the United States, to address a range of complex issues. Of course, which are made simple, so simple that it's like, would you like the red or the blue one? Well, the red one's not on offer, you're going to have the blue one. That's how it works. Yes, they're also useful in the government-controlled protest groups like Occupy and the Beyond Banal Extinction Rebellion, running exactly the same way. Very simple template. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let's carry on with this rubbish. Select committees have used citizens' assemblies in their work previously. For example, the Health and Social Care Select Committee and the Housing, Communities and Local Government Select Committee commissioned a citizens' assembly as part of their joint inquiry into the long-term funding of adult social care. OK, take a look into that and see what happened. In other words, it's dominated by lobbyists and corporate partners, stakeholders. Let's carry on. Why are the 6 select committees embarking on this? How will they take the work of the Citizens' Assembly forward? Oh, I can't wait to know that, can you? The 6 select committees of the House of Commons, the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, Environmental Audit, Housing, Communities and Local Government, Science and Technology, Transport and Treasury, who have made this announcement are and will be in the future undertaking a number of inquiries relating to climate change and UK efforts to reduce carbon emissions. There you go. No consultation on whether this is necessary, just the well-planned in-advance agenda being rolled out as if by consensus. In other words, you can't challenge whether we need to do this or not. It's how we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it has already been planned. Every public meeting of your local council is held in exactly the same way. It says here the Citizens' Assembly is intended to give an opportunity for public input into the climate change debate. Oh, really? Yeah, oh, really? Whose streets? Our streets. What do we want? A sustainable future. Nazi scum off our streets. Stop the hate. Can you put your anger aside for 1 minute, please, and listen? Please, people at the back, you're getting angry. You're bringing a really bad atmosphere into the room, and there's people here who want the best for everybody. So can we have a civilised conversation, please? In other words, this is a totalitarian agenda. Shut up, sit down, you've got no choice. Note that this is all about policies. It's basically all about policies which just need to be seen to be acceptable, as ordinarily they would not be considered acceptable. But you all voted for your demise through your own, yes, your very own citizens' assemblies. So let's get back to more of this nonsense. It says more broadly, the committees hope that the Citizens' Assembly will help to establish a consensus, well, who'd have thought, around public support for the ambitious changes needed to deliver net zero. Let's say that again. So as I just stated, you don't have a choice. All they're going to give you is a few false choices of how we do it. It's already been implemented. The plans are already in motion. Let me just read that to you again. More broadly, the committees hope that the Citizens' Assembly will help to establish a consensus around public support for the ambitious changes needed to deliver net zero. So you control the narrative of public opinion. That's what this is about. Don't kid yourself that the public are going to have any say in this whatsoever. They are not. I've seen this for the last 10 years. I've been looking at this at least, and I know this stuff inside out. This public support will help Parliament and government to pursue policy changes that are acceptable to voters. No, they're not acceptable to voters, but they're going to make them acceptable to voters, because if you're outside the narrow corridor of accepted opinion, then you're a hater. So put your anger to one side and just join in a civilised manner with the rest of us through consensus. Yep. This is totalitarianism, which makes all previous totalitarian regimes seem democratic. I'm not joking here. This is bigger than communism. So the Citizens' Assembly, it says here, will produce a report shortly after the conclusion of the sessions. I'm sure it will. Why don't they print it already? Oh, they probably have. The committees will be able to use the findings of the report in their work and seek to take evidence directly from Assembly participants, the useful idiots, the lobbyists and the stakeholders. Then the already predicted outcome is rolled out, loss of all your rights, property and your standard of living, and never been able to drive again. And as for getting on a plane and going on holiday, don't think about that either. When will it take place? It says here, will MPs be present at the Citizens' Assembly? The Assembly will take place over a number of weekends in the autumn or winter of 2019. Not long, folks. Details of the exact number of sessions will be determined in due course, but the committees expect the Citizens' Assembly to run for at least 2 weekends. 2 weekends. That's really pushing the boat out, isn't it? That's democracy in action. 2 weekends. With the potential for additional sessions to take place. Oh, really? Yeah, well, that'll just be the lobbyists putting forward what's already been written down in these draconian policies that they're going to implement. So bring in the facilitators and lobbyists with a smattering of fake greens, and all will be run with corporate efficiency. That's exactly what's going to happen. It says details of the location of the Citizens' Assembly will be decided in due course, but the events are expected to take place at venues outside London. The select committees expect to work with devolved administrations too. Committee members may attend sessions of the Citizens' Assembly, but the event will be delivered by the successful contractor. This is starting to sound more than a little familiar. It will be delivered by the successful contractor. I thought it was going to be delivered by the government. Interesting, eh? Well, that's in their own words, not mine. That's on the government website. MPs are not expected to take part in presentations at the Citizens' Assembly. Well, no, because they'd be liable afterwards, wouldn't they? Take away all public liability. That's what you have to do. So this is a corporate PR-controlled agenda run by change agents. The whole purpose of Extinction Rebellion was to completely remove public input by lobbying for the taking away of their rights. And the government are implementing the policies of the globalists who funded and brought you the same agenda brought to you by the idiots, basically. Yes, these idiots who glue themselves to buildings and have die-ins at Waitrose. Those who do not even know that their interpretation of the United Nations Special Report 15, which is indeed their foundation document, was rejected by the author of that very document. Can you see how absurd this is? You've got a fake protest group, which is a government-backed fake protest group, which is actually exaggerating the claims of the UN who are implementing the agenda on the back of a lie. You couldn't make this stuff up. This is unbelievable. So how will a select committee, it says here, ensure it is a representative group? The committees will be seeking a partner or partners to organise that and help deliver the Citizens' Assembly. They'll be seeking partners to organise and help deliver the Citizens' Assembly. Of course they will. Why don't they just give it all over to G4S? Oh, they probably will. Or Capita. In citizens' assemblies, the people who take part are chosen so they reflect the wider population. Yawn. In terms of demographics, yes, we've had all that. We don't need any more of that. And sometimes relevant attitudes. Yes, a PR company, put in place, basically. The successful contractor, it says here, will be required to set out how they will recruit people to the Citizens' Assembly. Who sets the topics? Which experts will be selected to pitch to the group? The successful contractor will work closely with committee staff and post on the preparation of background, learning materials, the identification of expert and stakeholder speakers. Oh, it is there. I didn't know that, you see, but it is there. Stakeholder speakers and the topics and questions to be addressed, which are all pre-planned, and the agenda is going to be steered to the intended outcome. That's my interjection, by the way. There will be a diversity of views represented. Oh, diversity means monoculture now, doesn't it? So in newspeak, diversity means there is no choice. That's exactly what it means. So that's a bit of a giveaway in their own documentation, isn't it? How will people apply? How many people are expected to participate? Further details on how the Citizens' Assembly will be constituted and the number of participants will be available at a later date. The successful contractor will be expected to set out how they will recruit participants to citizens' assemblies. Will participants be paid? It is anticipated that participants will have full costs of attendance covered and will also receive payment for the time they have given up in order to participate. They are going to be chosen by the PR companies or the company that sets this out, and they're going to be asked questions on questionnaires, and the useful idiots, the one that agree with it all, are going to be used. That's the way it works when they're doing local planning in your area to build new blocks of flats. That's the way this is going to work. It all works in exactly the same way. The committees expect to supplement the Citizens' Assembly with accompanying online conversations to capture wider public views. In other words, propaganda. No, sorry, dumb propaganda. Recruiting those who believe in the already predicted outcome is what they're going to do. This is how every so-called public consultation works in the UK, and we've proved it in our shows. Every new housing development built in your backyard uses the same principle. I have to keep reiterating this. There is one choice, the intended outcome. Complementary events, it says here, around the country may also be organised to test views in different parts of the country in more depth. Details of the other engagement opportunities and how to get involved will be available at a later date. Yes, a roadshow of change agents recruiting like-minded drones. Will proceedings be live-streamed, it says here. Decisions on this will be taken in conjunction with the contractor at a later date. If there is any chance of a member of the public giving a real view, it will be by accident, i.e. someone gives a statement which has been pre-agreed and then says what they really think on camera. Now, this is a really good thing to do. Go along with the agenda, give them a statement that you're going to say, then change it at the last minute if it's live. But it's very doubtful it will be. It's all going to be edited to perfection, like one of Sadiq Khan's diversity videos on how vibrant London is. It's going to look a bit like that, really. It's got basically actors. So the 5G and Internet of Things, driverless cars and mass surveillance and control of all your electricity and the forthcoming demise of gas all relies on Wi-Fi and 5G millimetre waves. But, get this, to finish off tonight's show, Lloyd's of London Insurance won't cover smartphones, Wi-Fi, smart meters, cell phone towers, basically by excluding all wireless radiation hazards from their underwriters. Lloyd's of London is one of the largest insurers in the world and often leads the way in protection, it says here, taking on risks that no one else will. Well, Lloyd's of London will underwrite all those coastal resorts and all those houses that are at threat from being drowned by the rising sea levels within 20 to 30 years. So why won't they insure against the technology we're talking about here, which is going to affect everybody, is indeed in everyone's house? Smart meters, the Internet of Things, they won't insure against damage by this, but you can insure your property by the sea in an area where there's going to be a prediction of rising sea levels with Lloyd's of London, and they're quite happy to do it. You know why? Because they know it's a load of rubbish. Right. So the World Health Organization and all public health bodies can be stopped in their tracks. Nobody will underwrite the risks of untested technology, but those who roll it out will be liable, and they have to be underwritten by somebody. So public liability, as we reported in last week's show, is paramount. There will be more on the local global agenda being rolled out in your area, more information on the subversive techniques used by these so-called public servants over the coming weeks. Wow, I had to pack quite a lot into this show. I really didn't think it would go over so fast, but in the next few weeks, we're going to be reporting on what's happening in your local area. We get news all the time. Do book the bigger picture. If you can afford to help out Windows on the World, please do. I'm travelling an awful lot at the moment and putting many hours in here. So if you can hit the donate button with a couple of quid, I don't ask very often, but it's much, much appreciated and incredibly well spent. Yes, I managed to live on basically nothing, and all of your contributions go towards the show and keeping the show on air. So thanks a lot for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week at the same time, and yes, if you've got a story, send it to us. See you next week on Windows on the World.
Passage of time,
Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and program stream at windowsontheworld.net.